He beat the rap and for years has gone untouched by law enforcement. But now insiders say there could be trouble on the horizon for a reputed mobster with ties to the video poker business. Fox 29's Dave Stratweiser and the Enquirer's George Anastasia have the latest in this week's Mob Talk.
Welcome to this week's edition of Mob Talk. I'm Dave Stratweiser.
And I'm George Anastasia with the Philadelphia Enquirer.
George, this week we're going to talk about a fellow who's kind of below the radar screen, not really on the radar screen, Gaeton Lucibello, who by some accounts is either a captain or a soldier.
Yeah, this is a guy who literally and figuratively over the last 20 years has dodged a lot of bullets.
All right, George, let's talk a little bit about Gaeton Lucibello. Interesting fellow, been 20 years or so in and around mob circles, but always managed to avoid any kind of trouble.
Yeah, and he's always denied any involvement, but he's always around these guys. He was originally with Stanford, according to the feds, and was charged in a RICO case with being involved in a couple murders, which he denied. But in the midst of that Stanford situation, he switched sides and aligned himself with Merlino. And he was the guy Stanford's picked up on a wiretap saying he wanted to shoot him in the back of the head, cut off his tongue, put it in an envelope, and send it to his wife. So, I mean, Gaeton's had a lot of situations where he's been kind of, the bullseye's been on him. And that was one of them, and that was one of the more notorious tapes in that whole Stanford investigation.
And he had the bullseye in his back with the feds. He sat at the table with Stanford in the first Stanford trial back in the mid-90s.
Right. He was tried in that second set, and they broke the trial up into different defendants. He was tried with a group of 5 defendants, took the stand in his own defense, and said he wasn't involved, and he was acquitted. So the jury accepted his defense that he was not involved in the mob, even though the feds back then and the feds today continue to say he's part of the organization.
A risky move by him to get on the witness stand, but he was carefully guided through it by Emmett Fitzpatrick,
yeah,
former DA, who kind of led him through the testimony, and he did quite well. In fact, he did say, I'm not good friends with these guys. I'm not a made guy. I'm not even an associate.
Yeah, I mean, Emmett wasn't afraid to put his guys on the stand. He believed you got to get up there and talk, especially in these kind of cases. And Gaeton handled himself very well. Some others have not. But he was very good, very effective, and I think that's one of the reasons he beat the rap.
Okay, then he finishes with that. The Merlinos take over. The Merlino group takes over after Stanford goes to jail, and then he's around the Merlino crew.
Yeah, and depending on who you're talking to and what chart you're looking at one point he's a capo, at one point he's mentioned as a possible consigliere. I mean, we believe now he's back as a soldier, but he's always been associated with and linked to the organization out there. And now, I mean, the thing he's supposedly heavily involved in is the video poker machine operations, and we know that's the focus of part of the ongoing investigation.
All right, before we leave the Merlino years, he does not get indicted with the Merlino crew in 1999, 2000, 2001 when they go on trial, but he's at the trial almost every day.
Yeah, I mean, there's a guy, again, he's dodged a lot of bullets. He was part of that organization, according to the feds, but when they brought the racketeering indictment, based on a lot of work that Ron Previty and those guys did, he was not one of the individuals charged. So he's managed to stay out there and go about his business, and according to law enforcement, it's a very lucrative business. He's done very well.
All right, let's talk about that now. A couple months back, the state police and the state attorney general's office here in Pennsylvania do a big video poker raid down in South Philadelphia. They collect up a bunch of machines. They hit a place that had 25 or 30 machines in it that is supposedly he has some interest in at that point. So is he back on the radar screen?
I think he is. I mean, 2 things in that investigation. One, the garage that they hit, according to law enforcement, at one point he had an interest in that garage. Whether he still did was unclear. The second thing is their allegation was that a lot of the machines that were confiscated were in part or wholly owned by either Lucibello or the alleged mob boss Joe Lagambi or members of that organization. So the state police and the PA Attorney General's office was clearly focusing on an organized crime video poker machine operation that they believe the feds may now adopt.
All right, now there's also a government witness, Stephen Carnival, who spoke a little bit about Lucibello in some tapes and things like that that have been aired out in court. Very
interesting. Carnival was an admitted drug dealer, pled guilty to drug dealing, and became a cooperating witness. And in the course of his testimony and in debriefings with the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office, detailed meetings he had with Gaeton Lucibello, and he alleges, Carnival alleges, that in order for Carnival to sell drugs in South Philadelphia and to run a video poker machine operation, he had to pay off to the mob, and he was paying off to Gaeton Lucibello. He also says that at one of these meetings, different associates talked about the murder of Long John Mortorano. Said Mortorano was hit because he was trying to get back into video poker machines, and that an associate of Lucibello stood up and said he was the driver the day the hit went down.
All right, and we have video of him at Joe Curo's funeral, Joe Crutch,
right.
When he died. He was one of the 5, 6 pallbearers that worked in that funeral.
Yeah, I mean, these are the kind of things that law enforcement does in terms of making the connections. And if they bring a charge, those kind of videos, those kind of photos will show up in court to show the associations. Here's a guy, he doesn't know these guys, here he is as a pallbearer, that kind of stuff. So that kind of thing helps in terms of building the broader picture, but it remains to be seen whether, the Fed's going to bring the charge and whether this time they're going to stick.
All right, George, not to make light of this, but during the week there's an interesting report out of South Jersey about a man sending a toy horse head in a box to State Senator Stephen Sweeney's office down in Gloucester County. What do you make of this?
Well, I mean, it's an obvious reference to The Godfather, make him an offer he can't refuse kind of thing. The individual has been arrested and he's, I think, undergoing a psychiatric evaluation, so we don't know what the motivation was, but, that's part of the pop culture now. Horse's head, everybody knows what that means. This is the mob. We're making you an offer you can't refuse.
Interesting, but he's in a lot of trouble right now.
Yeah, it's a strange politics in South Jersey, absolutely.
Okay, that's it for Mob Talk this week. We'll see you next week.